I've been working at this amazing place called the Foundery, and I have a project I've been working on for them for a long time. Each Tuesday I've been working on restoring the surface grinder, so this video is going to be like parts 1 through who knows what, and I'm going to give you an overview of what we've done so far and then show you the rest of the process. The blacksmith here at the Foundry is really connected to different tool sellers, vendors, whatever, and he was like excited about this deal. We gotta go now. It's a surface grinder and it's $200. So we drove up to this cool blacksmith shop in the bucolic woods of Maryland and made the deal. It seemed fine. I think I got a set of toe straps out of it, or ratchet straps as well. It looked a little rough around the edges, but I was excited to take it down, build it back up. So we brought it back to the Foundry, and I took some pictures of the before kind of scenario. It had a lot of surface rust on different parts. It looked like there was a little bit of damage to the guards. So the thing that really is not pictured in this video, in these parts 1 through 9 or 1 through 10 or however you want to think about it, is all the disassembly, cleaning, sandblasting, painting, getting ready for the final coat and reassembly, which maybe you would say that's the bulk of the work in restoring an old machine, but it was not very interesting. All the parts, we unscrewed them, took all the bolts out. I soaked some of them in rust remover. I sandblasted almost all of them. We put noxious aircraft stripper on every surface. I used an angle grinder and a wire brush and a whole bunch of different things to get all the old paint off, all the old grime. This thing was filthy. There was the inevitable, oh cool, there's stink bugs living in this thing, or oh great, there's like grass underneath underneath a cover or something. And once it was clean and sandblasted, we hit it with the brown or the rusty metal primer that you see in a lot of the pictures. And that took a long time. We just kept chipping away at it. So now we'll get back to the actual video portion of this episode. There's a ton of parts on the surface grinder, and I disassembled the entire thing down to bare metal, sandblasted all the parts, and coated them all with primer. Surface grinder is not very big when you get it, but then when you take it all apart, it takes up a lot of space. But one of the things that was so dirty on this surface grinder were these leveling bolts, and it was a huge pain to get them out, and what I ended up doing is completely cleaned them top to bottom, sandblasted them, made sure there was no sand in any of the threads, and then I heated it up in a kiln up to 470 degrees, which gives it this nice purple, almost blue oxide layer. And that layer actually protects the metal. It's essentially a controlled rusting process. So there's an oxide that gets built up, and then you oil the bolt, and that oil soaks into the oxide and protects it. This is the Mag Chuck. It's an LW Chuck company from Toledo, Ohio. You may not see, but there's masking tape here. I did not just paint the top of the chuck. This is painted red because I thought it would look pretty good, contrasting with the gray color the surface grinder is gonna have. Same with the shroud for the grinding wheel, so they're both red. And you kind of want to be aware of what the red parts are, so that you don't get your hand between a grinder. This chuck was very interesting. It had been ground at a completely skewed angle because the way that they leveled the bed of this surface grinder was to shim it with a 30,000th piece of sheet metal. So this should be incredibly apparent in this shot. Look at this slant here versus, this is supposed to be flat. This is ground, and that was because this end was basically up like that. This was flat. What they had done was underneath the magnet chuck there was a large piece of sheet metal. Well, the only reason that that piece of sheet metal would have been under the chuck is if the bed wasn't lined up correctly. And when I disassembled the bed, which is right here, this is a very nicely ground way that was in great condition, but they had put in a plastic, sort of like a roller bearing, like a flat roller bearing that I've since thrown away, and it lifted up the bed, I guess the main part of the table to a level area if you take into account the sheet metal from the magnet chuck. Well, why would they need to shim the bed? Well, once I disassembled the whole the main frame of it, I found that the mainways were completely skewed, and it was like the whole thing was warped. And then we ultimately came to find out that the bolts that were holding the machine on its base were at completely different pressures, basically twisting the whole process. And when we unscrewed those bolts, it leveled right out and was completely flat and slid great. So I don't know what kind of redneck engineering was going on with this beforehand, but once it's all reassembled, leveled, shimmed, and everything just right, we'll take a pretty heavy pass off the top of this. I mean, it might be too much to even grind because I mean, it looks like it might be maybe 1/8 of an inch even, 100 thousandths or something over this length. So we may have to shim it anyway just to not have to take it down, down to here, so with a grinder, or if it gets into the magnetic way parts. It definitely wasn't like a intentional thing on whoever used to own this to have it. It wasn't like they were trying to avoid milling this down. This was machined in because of other problems with the machine. So these are actually not original parts to this surface grinder. There were guards just like this that came with the machine when we got a hold of it, but one had been cut like this, just completely trashed. The other one had a ragged hole, kind of plasma cut in here. And I guess what they were doing is that these guards go on the edge of the bed as it goes back and forth, catches the metal, and maybe they had a long part, so they wanted a panel that was removable. What's cool about the place that I have my shop is they have a water jet machine, so it was pretty straightforward to CAD up a sheet metal part, do the water jet all the holes, all this stuff, bend it, and then weld it. So it took maybe an hour to make these two brand new guards, and then they come with little cover panels, which I imagine will be on most of the time, so we catch all the grime and grit, but if you needed to remove it for whatever reason, you could pop these off. This is the original cross-side shaft, and it may be possible to see that it is very warped. There's some debate as to how this happened, but it may have fallen off a forklift or something and cocked the handle to the side. So when you spin the cross-slide handle, this, I think it was in there like this. You'd spin the cross-slide handle and the whole handle would rotate. Also, this machine used to be on a rack and pinion drive, so there's complicated like oil control rod, and there was a spring, and there was some different bearings basically that would tension a gear on a rack that then when you cranked the handle, it would move that rack back and forth to cross-slide the surface grinder. So someone had replaced that since with a wire-based one, so there was this pulley here that turned a belt, and that spun a drum with a cable on it, which would move the cross-slide back and forth. But they left all this shaft like that, but in repairing it, short of replacing the rack, we're just going to machine a new shaft, really just cutting it to length and tapping it for set screw, I believe. We're going to replace some large bearings that were difficult to find with the brass bushing on one end, and then we do have new needle bearing for the where it interacts with this new pulley which we machined. So it'll be a bit of an improved design for what it's being used for now, which is that drum-based cross slide. But this was one of the big problems that we noticed that really needed to be taken care of. This is that drum, so this belt would go on that pulley, and as you twisted it back and forth, there was a cable that was attached to the bottom of the bed, kind of like the bows that you use to start a fire. You hold a bow and it has a string wrapped around a stick, and as you move the bow back and forth, it spins the stick. Same principle, except in this case you're spinning the stick and moving the bow. So yeah, there are a lot of parts on this. I mean, we got this. There's a really cool looking lamp. We got the oiler and all this stuff we had to go through and basically clean, repair, check for any damage. So I hope you enjoyed the condensed version of the first several parts of the series on restoring this surface grinder. I am looking forward to actually finishing the project so that we can use it here at the shop, and that they stop giving me a hard time about how long it's taking, because I'm only working on it basically one day a week. But in the next episode or video, whatever you want to call it, we're going to be doing the final coat of gray, sort of machine tool gray on top of all the parts, and that will get us ready for reassembly. If you enjoyed this, or you're excited about some of the other videos we're going to make, please give this a like or subscribe to the channel, and look forward to making some more videos. Thanks.